The start of 2026 always indicates a new tax season. We are filing taxes now and hopefully get some refunds back on overpayments. But for some people, their tax cuts are not going to come in the form of a refund. They're going to come in the form of savings back into your pocket on your checks. So, what is a refund and how is it going to affect you on this episode of Saving America's Money?
But you're looking ahead to the impact of the tax cuts and the tax refund season. What are you expecting?
There's a lot of money that's going to be poured into the U.S. economy by tax refunds and tax cuts in 2026, and that can only be a positive for economic growth. And thus far, this expectation of this fiscal jolt, this influx of money from tax cuts and refunds hasn't put all that much upward pressure on bond yields, and that's a good thing. And it very well might be the case that if the refunds and the tax cuts do enough to stimulate spending, we might well see a meaningful recovery by jobs growth come the second quarter of this year.
Well, when I look at this list, there's some things that obviously stand out to me. One, I think about tax cuts and refunds as a opportunity, right? Not just a boost. It's an opportunity to kind of reset the table. What tax cuts are or refunds are overpayment of money that you paid throughout the 2025 or 2024, work season. But what they're not is just like extra money. So what I was definitely thinking about is what could you do to start to put that money to good use, right? Some of the things I think about is, paying off debt, right? Actually saving money. We always want to have about 3 to 6 months of savings, right? For business owners, this helps cover your payroll, your rent, your inventory, right? You have an ability to reinvest and to upgrade your equipment, right? Maybe hire more people, right? You have a lot of things that you can do to help kind of rebuild yourself, right? For the everyday person, right? It's, kind of easing off inflation. It's putting more money back into your pocket, especially if you are on Social Security or you work a lot of overtime, right? That is money that is going right back into your pocket that you don't necessarily have to pay taxes on. A big one for sure is tips, right? Again, that is how most people make their living. So not having to tax on tips. Now, if you're in the state of California or states like California that don't believe in these things, like then you're, SOL. But most states have adopted the no tax on tips, which I believe is a good thing. And every state should actually follow that protocol.
Well, this morning, I was looking at a number of expectations, and I see that Piper Sandler is looking at some $200 billion in tax refunds. And the analyst there says they're going to spend 70% of that. So if we're talking about, Kevin Hassett, for example, told me on Friday that we're watching the biggest tax refund season that we've ever seen.
Our expectation is that you're going to have the biggest refund season ever, which is going to be a significant positive stimulus for the economy. But I will add a non-inflationary stimulus because we've got all the supply going up, too. We've got $18 trillion in new factory construction and so on. And so I think that it's really, the Trump golden age is...
None of that stuff has happened yet, by the way. So let's just be clear. Sounds good, but it hasn't happened yet. So we can only take the data that we have now is that, great, you're going to get back a significant refund. But, how that affects, the future is to be seen. Here's another thing we have to think about. If another party gets elected in the upcoming 2028 elections, then all this goes out the door. Tax on tips, tax on overtime, tax on Social Security. Certain people, they want to tax everything. Here in California, they're not interested in taxing they're not interested in you not paying taxes on your tips. They want you to pay taxes on your tips. They want you to pay taxes on your earnings. They want you to pay taxes on your stocks, on your property. They want you to pay tax on everything. Okay. Which is a real debate about the difference between the internal tax revenue service and then the external revenue service, right? I think what we're seeing with tariffs is external. We're actually taxing countries I haven't spent a lot of time on tariffs. I had a video very early on in Saving America's Money. You might want to go back and watch it. It's about tariffs and how, tariffs came about. But, to review, in the older days, before this Federal Reserve was built into our system, and before it started to print money, we had to export. We had a lot of manufacturing. And so to import and export, what countries would do is say, hey, if you want to sell your goods over here, let's say in China, we're going to tax you on selling your goods to America, or vice versa. If America is going to sell goods to China, China's going to, charge a tariff to America. The way it's been working for actually a very long time is that America, obviously, we're not doing as much exporting as we used to do because a lot of our jobs and manufacturing have been sent overseas. But anything that we export has been charged on tariffs. The people don't understand that. Now, because certain alliances were made with other countries, and this is why I think we're having this huge meeting here in Davos this weekend. If you guys want to check that out, there's a big contingency of U.S. People in Davos talking about kind of the new philosophies and ways the U.S. is going about things these days. But one of those things is, charging tariffs on countries, right? Because it was only the U.S. that was paying tariffs to China, to India, to Europe, but none of those countries were paying tariffs to the United States, right? I mean, it's kind of like I use an example of, you open your house to, someone to do their to rent it out, right, for a birthday, or let's say you're doing Airbnb, right? And you're just like, I'm not going to charge you anything to, to host your party here, to have people come over and utilize my house. And then, you just walk out and leave a mess. And I got to clean it up. I got to do everything to prepare for it and clean it up, make sure everybody's is fed and whatever. But at the end of the day, you just walk out. You make all the money because you charge people to be at your party. But ultimately, I have to allow for you to just come here and set up shop and reap the rewards. It doesn't work like that in the world. And it shouldn't work like that, right? I'm a firm believer if we're doing business over here, you want to sell your stuff to Americans, then you have to pay a tariff. If we want to sell stuff to you, then we have to pay a tariff. And it has to go both ways, right? But that's somehow I went over a whole lot of tangent. But coming back internally, what happened was we became the tax system. So your tax dollars that we spend every day, that we pay for every day, that we pay for goods and sell services and everything that we do, your tax dollars are going back into the system. And I think the one thing that people need to understand is the amount of money that we're making from countries and the amount of money the U.S. taxpayer, the taxpayer is putting together is you're probably making more money externally than internally, right? So if that happens, why should we pay taxes, right? We have this whole other system. I mean, why should we should keep all of our money. This is what I believe. I think there is maybe sales taxes and things we should pay. Ultimately, I think we don't taxes are a concept that was driven out of the rebirth of the Federal Reserve. And if you don't believe me, go read the book of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm sorry, not Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Creature of Jekyll Island. That is the name of the book. That tells you about how the Federal Reserve was set up and everything that happened from that, and how the Federal Reserve took over our currency, started printing money, and then also started to charge us taxes or the form of interest onto that money. And that's how the IRS came about. That's just it, right? So with that being said, that's just a little bit of a history of why we pay taxes. So any money that you're getting back today, again, like I said, it should be used for a reset, not just for you going out there and just spending on new cars and clothes and vacations. I mean, good. Nothing wrong with those things. If that's what you do with your money, so be it. But again, what I think about is if a new administration comes in here, it says, you know what? We're done with tariffs. We're done with, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Everybody go back to the way things were. Then we're going to see, right, what really is truly the goal for America, if that makes sense. So I hope you guys look at how much you're going to get back this year, right? Come up with a plan, pay off your debt. Use this as a chance to reset your whole financial house. Okay. With that being said, guys, this is Saving America's Money. Be strong, be safe, and continue to save America's money. Peace.